The distress signal. The blue lights of the Galactic Council chamber flickered as the emergency transmission crackled through the speakers. Ambassador Zeftar's forearms trembled as he adjusted the communication device, his pale green skin growing even paler with each static-filled word. Mayday. Mayday. This is research vessel Serenity's Edge, Kepler 442 system. The voice belonged to Captain Velnara, a respected Altarian commander known for her calm demeanor, but now her voice shook with pure terror. We have encountered something. The indigenous species. They're not what we thought. The transmission cut to static for several seconds before returning. In the background, other voices could be heard screaming in multiple alien languages. The universal translator struggled to keep up with the panic. They came from underground, Captain Velnara continued, her breathing heavy and rapid. We thought they were simple tunnel dwellers. We were wrong. So very wrong. They hunt in packs. They coordinate. They enjoy this. Ambassador Zeftar looked around the council chamber. Representatives from 14 different species sat in their floating chairs, their faces showing confusion and growing alarm. The Calaxians, with their large black eyes, blinked rapidly in distress. The crystalline Xerians dimmed their natural light as fear overtook them. Captain, please explain your situation clearly, came the voice of Council Director Homgar, a massive bear-like creature from the Ursine Collective. His deep voice tried to project calm authority, but even he seemed shaken. They don't just kill. Captain Velnara's voice broke through more static. They play with their prey. My science team. I can hear them screaming in the lower decks. The creatures keep them alive while they feed. Dr. Zenworth was taken 3 hours ago. We can still hear him begging. The transmission erupted with a sound that made every being in the council chamber recoil. It was a chittering, clicking noise mixed with what could only be described as laughter. Alien laughter, but laughter nonetheless. They're in the walls now, the captain whispered, moving through the ventilation systems. They're too smart, too organized. We tried to establish communication, but they don't want to talk. They want to hunt. And we are perfect prey. Dr. Quintel, the ship's chief xenobiologist, could be heard shouting in the background. They adapt. Every defense we put up, they find a way around it within minutes. It's like they think like weapons themselves. The council members exchanged worried glances. The Galactic Council had encountered dangerous species before, but nothing that could terrorize an entire research crew like this. The Serenity's Edge carried over 300 scientists and crew members from 12 different species. It was one of the most advanced ships in the fleet. How many of these creatures are there? Director Homgar asked. Unknown, Captain Velnara replied, her voice now barely above a whisper. They came up from deep underground tunnels. Hundreds, maybe thousands. They move too fast to count. And they're learning from us. Every time we use a weapon, they adapt to it. Every time we try to hide, they find new ways to track us. A new voice joined the transmission. It was Engineer Corallan speaking in rapid, panicked tones. The creatures have reached the engine room. They're not trying to destroy the ship. They're herding us. Like livestock. The transmission filled with the sound of running footsteps and alien shrieks. Then came a noise that made even the hardened military representatives in the council chamber shudder. It was the sound of metal being torn apart by something with incredible strength. They're through the blast doors, Engineer Corallan screamed. How did they get through reinforced duralloy so fast? They have claws, but they're using tools too. Primitive tools, but effective ones. Captain Velnara's voice returned, now filled with desperate urgency. Council, if anyone receives this message, do not approach this system. Do not send rescue ships. These creatures will overwhelm any normal response. They hunt like nothing we've ever encountered. They think like predators, but they have intelligence, cruel intelligence. The sound of the captain's weapon firing could be heard, followed by inhuman screams that quickly turned into what sounded like excited chittering. I hit 3 of them, she reported. They're not dead. They're excited. The pain makes them hunt harder. What kind of evolution creates something like this? Dr. Quintel's voice echoed from somewhere distant on the ship. Captain, I've been studying their behavior patterns. They're not just hunting for food. They're hunting for sport. They enjoy the fear. They feed on terror as much as flesh. The transmission began to break up more frequently now. Between bursts of static, the council could hear the sounds of a ship being systematically invaded by something that treated the hunt like a game. Council, Captain Velnara's voice came through one final time, now barely audible. If you're going to send help, don't send diplomats. Don't send scientists. Don't send anyone who hesitates to kill. Send predators. Send something these creatures have never faced before. Send something that hunts hunters. The transmission cut to static, then silence. Director Hamgar cleared his massive throat. How long ago was this signal sent? The communications officer, a nervous Draxi with shaking tentacles, checked his instruments. 17 hours, sir. The signal had to travel through 3 relay stations to reach us. Any follow-up transmissions? No, sir. Complete communications blackout from the Kepler 442 system. The council chamber fell into heavy silence. Each representative knew what this meant. The Serenity's edge and everyone aboard was likely lost. But the larger question remained. What kind of species could do this to a council research vessel? Ambassador Zeftar finally spoke, his voice hollow. We need to respond. We cannot abandon our people. With what? Asked Representative Thrixon, her insectoid features twitching with anxiety. The captain said not to send normal ships. What do we have that could handle creatures like this? The silence stretched longer. Every species in the Galactic Council was civilized, peaceful, evolved beyond the need for constant warfare. They had weapons, of course, but they were designed for defense against pirates and the occasional territorial dispute. None of them were equipped to deal with creatures that hunted for pleasure. Finally, Director Hamgar spoke the words that everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to say. We call the humans. The suggestion sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. Humans were members of the Galactic Council, but they were different. They came from a world so dangerous that every other species classified it as a death world. Their entire evolution had been shaped by constant predation, environmental disasters, and the need to fight for survival. Are we certain this situation requires their particular expertise? Ambassador Zeftar asked carefully. Director Hamgar's dark eyes swept the chamber. The captain's final words were clear. Send predators, send something that hunts hunters. In all our civilized galaxy, there is only one species that fits that description. The council voted. It was unanimous, though reluctant. They would call Earth. They would ask the Deathworlders for help. And somewhere in the deep space between stars, monitoring stations detected the final death throes of the Serenity's edge as its power core went dark forever. The Deathworld Response Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the massive viewing window of Terra Defense Command, watching the blue marble of Earth rotate slowly below. Her reflection stared back from the reinforced glass. A woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back in a tight military bun, and eyes that had seen too many battles across the Outer Rim territories. The communication alert chimed behind her. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his console, his young face creased with confusion. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. It's unusual. Chen turned, her boots clicking against the metal floor of the command center. Around her, dozens of officers monitored Earth's defense grid, tracking merchant vessels and patrol ships across human space. The room hummed with quiet efficiency. Unusual how? They're requesting immediate military assistance. Code red priority, but the language is diplomatic. Chen raised an eyebrow. The Galactic Council rarely contacted Earth directly, and when they did, it was usually to complain about human expansion or aggressive trading practices. They certainly never asked for military help. Put it through to my office. Admiral Chen's private office was sparse and functional. A single desk, 2 chairs and walls lined with commendations from conflicts the Galactic Council preferred to pretend never happened. She activated the secure communication terminal and waited. Director Hamgar's massive form appeared on the screen, his bear-like features showing unusual strain. Behind him, Chen could see other council representatives looking nervous and agitated. Admiral Chen, the director began, his voice carrying formal diplomatic weight. The Galactic Council requests Terra's assistance in a matter of grave concern. Chen leaned back in her chair. 20 years of dealing with alien politics had taught her to read between the lines. When the council used phrases like grave concern, they were usually terrified. What kind of assistance? A council research vessel has encountered hostile indigenous life forms in the Kepler 442 system. The situation requires immediate intervention by forces with specialized capabilities. Chen almost smiled. Specialized capabilities was council speak for extreme violence. They wanted humans to do something they couldn't or wouldn't do themselves. What happened to the research vessel? Director Homgar's expression darkened. Communication was lost 17 hours ago. The final transmission indicated the crew was under attack by creatures that display unusual hunting behaviors and adaptive intelligence. Survivors? Unknown. The transmission suggested the creatures were keeping crew members alive for extended periods. Chen's expression hardened. She had heard similar reports from the Outer Rim colonies. Species that played with their food were among the worst enemies humanity had ever faced. Send me everything you have. The data package arrived within minutes. Chen reviewed the transmission records, technical specifications of the Serenity's Edge, and the limited information about Kepler 442's indigenous life forms. What she read made her jaw clench. The aliens had walked into a nightmare and now they wanted Earth to clean it up. Chen opened a channel to Fleet Command. General Morrison, priority alert. We need the Rapid Response Division ready for immediate deployment. General Morrison's weathered face appeared on her secondary screen. The old soldier had fought in the Titan mining wars and the Proxima Centauri conflict. He was one of the few people who understood how humans fought when the gloves came off. What's the situation? Galactic Council has a bug problem. Big bugs that like to play with their food. They need exterminators. Morrison grinned, an expression that would have terrified most aliens. How big is this bug problem? Unknown. Could be planetary scale. They took out a council research vessel with 300 crew members. Understood. I'll have RRD ready in 4 hours. Make it 2 hours. And Morrison, full combat loadout. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. The Rapid Response Division was humanity's answer to threats that required overwhelming force applied quickly. 12 heavy cruisers, each carrying 2,000 Marines trained in hostile environment warfare, 4 dreadnoughts with enough firepower to glass a small moon, and the experimental carrier Retribution, loaded with fighters designed specifically for close-quarters combat in confined spaces. Admiral Chen walked to the fleet preparation deck, where she could see the ships powering up for departure. The massive vessels bristled with weapon systems that made most alien militaries nervous. Humans didn't build ships for show or diplomacy. They built them to win wars. Captain Rodriguez of the Retribution approached, his combat armor already sealed and ready. Admiral, the crew is eager for deployment. It's been 6 months since our last action. Chen nodded. Human military personnel needed regular combat to stay sharp. Peacetime made them restless and dangerous. A real mission would be good for morale. This isn't a standard operation, Captain. We're dealing with creatures that hunt for sport. They enjoy causing fear and pain. The aliens are calling them impossible predators. Rodriguez smiled, and Chen was reminded why other species feared humans. Ma'am, with respect, they haven't met impossible predators yet. The loading process was a symphony of organized chaos. Marines loaded weapons and equipment designed for every possible combat scenario. Flame units for close quarters, heavy weapons for open ground, sonic disruptors for psychological warfare. Combat engineers prepared breaching charges and environmental suits. Lieutenant Colonel Hassan, leader of the 1st Battalion, reviewed his mission parameters. Standard rules of engagement, Admiral? Chen considered this. Standard human rules of engagement were considered war crimes by most galactic species. They involved concepts like acceptable casualties and total enemy elimination that made peaceful aliens uncomfortable. Modified ROE, she decided. Priority is crew rescue and threat elimination. No prisoners unless they surrender. No mercy for anything that tortures sentience. Hassan's grin was predatory. Understood, ma'am. The ship's AI systems began calculating jump coordinates and tactical approaches. Human AIs were different from their alien counterparts. They were programmed for warfare, designed to think like generals and strategists. They analyzed the limited data from the Serenity's Edge and began preparing battle plans that would have horrified the Galactic Council. Chief Engineer Park ran final systems checks. Admiral, all ships report ready for hyperspace jump. Estimated travel time to Kepler 442 is 18 hours. Any concerns about the mission parameters? Park shook his head. The crew is ready, ma'am. We've been training for hostile xenobiology scenarios. The men are excited to put their skills to practical use. Admiral Chen walked to the command deck of her flagship, the dreadnought Vengeance. The bridge crew snapped to attention as she entered. These were professionals who had fought pirates, hostile aliens, and worse things in the dark between stars. Attention all ships, she announced over the fleet communication system. We are responding to a Galactic Council request for assistance. A research vessel has been attacked by hostile indigenous life forms. Our mission is search and rescue, followed by threat elimination. She paused, knowing that every human in the fleet understood what that meant. The aliens describe these creatures as impossible predators that hunt for sport and torture their prey. They think they're the apex predators in their system. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Several officers smiled grimly. They're about to learn what real predators look like. All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. The human fleet disappeared into the void, carrying with it the concentrated violence of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Behind them, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, while its children went to war among the stars. First contact with horror. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, like wolves entering a slaughterhouse. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, studying the tactical display with cold professional interest. "Sensor sweep complete," reported Commander Park, her sensor officer. "I'm reading the Serenity's edge in orbit around the fourth planet. She's alive, but barely." The main screen flickered to life, showing the Council research vessel. What they saw made even hardened human soldiers pause. The ship's once pristine hull was covered in organic growths that pulsed with sickly bioluminescent patterns. Twisted structures jutted from the surface like thorns, and the entire vessel seemed to breathe with malevolent life. "Dear God," whispered Lieutenant Torres. "What did they do to that ship?" Chen's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened. "They turned it into a nest. Captain Rodriguez, launch reconnaissance drones. I want to know what we're dealing with before we board." The drones launched from the Retribution, sleek mechanical predators designed for stealth observation. As they approached the infected vessel, their cameras revealed details that would haunt the crew's dreams. The ship's exterior showed clear signs of intelligent modification. The organic growths weren't random. They formed patterns, structures, almost like a twisted form of architecture. Openings in the hull had been sealed with secreted materials, creating controlled environments within. Most disturbing were the transparent sections where movement could be seen inside. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "I'm detecting multiple life signs aboard the vessel, both alien and something else. How many? Difficult to say. The organic material is interfering with our sensors, but I'm reading at least 3 distinct Council species signatures. They're alive, but their biosigns are unusual." Chen activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All units, we have confirmed survivors aboard the target vessel. Prepare boarding parties. Alpha Team takes the bridge section. Beta Team secures engineering. Charlie Team searches for survivors. Full combat gear and environmental suits. Captain Martinez of the 3rd Marine Battalion suited up in the Vengeance's armory. His power armor was black and intimidating, designed for boarding actions in hostile environments. Around him, his team checked weapons and equipment with the calm professionalism of soldiers who had done this many times before. "Remember," Martinez addressed his men, "we're dealing with unknown hostile xenobiology. Anything that moves and isn't wearing a Council uniform gets put down. Hard and fast. No hesitation." Sergeant Williams loaded specialized ammunition into his assault rifle. "What about survivors who might be infected or compromised?" "We evaluate on site. If they're conscious and coherent, we extract them. If they're not..." Martinez left the sentence hanging. His men understood. The boarding shuttles launched from multiple ships, approaching the Serenity's edge from different angles. As they drew closer, the full horror of what had happened became clear. The creatures hadn't just invaded the ship, they had transformed it into something that served their purposes. "This is Alpha Leader," Martinez reported as his shuttle docked with what used to be the main airlock. "Outer hull shows evidence of controlled modifications. These things are builders as well as hunters." The airlock had been sealed with the organic membrane that looked disturbingly like skin. Marine demolitions expert Corporal Johnson placed a small charge against it and stepped back. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The explosion tore through the membrane, revealing a corridor that no longer looked like it belonged on a spaceship. The walls were covered in the same organic growth seen on the exterior, but here it formed complex patterns that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. Bioluminescent patches provided an eerie blue-green light that cast twisted shadows. "Jesus Christ," muttered Private Chen as they entered. "It's like the inside of something's stomach." Martinez led his team deeper into the ship, following the original corridor layout while navigating around the organic modifications. The air was thick and humid, filled with a smell that reminded them of decomposing vegetation mixed with something metallic. "Motion sensor contact," reported Sergeant Williams. Bearing 270 50 meters ahead, the team advanced in formation, weapons ready. What they found was their first glimpse of the creatures that had terrorized the council crew. It was approximately 3 meters long, with a segmented body that seemed part insect and part plant. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that could clearly tear through metal, while its head featured compound eyes and mandibles designed for cutting. But what made the humans pause was the tool in its claws, a primitive but effective cutting implement made from ship's metal. "It's using tools," whispered Private Chen. The creature noticed them and let out a sound. That was part screech, part clicking, and somehow conveyed excitement rather than alarm. It didn't flee. Instead, it seemed to study them with intelligent interest. Martinez raised his rifle. End of study period. The plasma burst hit the creature center mass, dropping it instantly. But as it died, it made a series of complex sounds that echoed through the ship's modified corridors. "Was that communication?" asked Sergeant Williams. "Probably calling its friends," Martinez replied grimly. "Move faster." As they progressed deeper into the ship, they found evidence of the creature's systematic hunting methodology. Crew quarters had been converted into what could only be described as storage areas, with organic pods hanging from the ceiling. Some were empty, but others clearly contained occupants. "Beta team to Alpha," came Captain Rodriguez's voice over the comm. "We found the engineering section. It's been completely transformed. The creatures have created some kind of nursery down here. We can see movement in the organic structures. Any survivors? Negative in engineering. But we're detecting life signs in what used to be the medical bay." Martinez led his team toward the medical section, following corridors that had been reshaped by alien intelligence. The creatures had clearly studied the ship's layout and modified it to suit their purposes. Passages had been narrowed to create choke points, while other areas had been opened up to create larger spaces. They found the medical bay transformed into something that defied description. The original medical equipment had been incorporated into organic structures that seemed to serve the same functions, but in ways that were both alien and terrifying. In the center of the room, 3 council members hung suspended in cocoon-like structures. "Survivors confirmed," Martinez reported. "But they're contained." The 3 aliens were alive but unconscious, suspended in semi-transparent organic sacs that seemed to be feeding them nutrients while keeping them sedated. Their faces showed signs of recent terror, but they were breathing and their vital signs appeared stable. "Alpha Team, this is the Admiral," came Chen's voice. "What's the status of the survivors?" 3 council members in some kind of preservation state. The creatures appear to be keeping them as livestock. The implication hung heavy in the air. These creatures didn't just hunt for food or territory. They kept prey alive for extended periods, either for fresh food or for some other purpose that was too horrible to contemplate. Sergeant Williams began setting up extraction equipment. "Sir, how do we get them out of these things without killing them?" Martinez studied the organic cocoons. They were clearly alive, with their own circulatory systems feeding into the prisoners. Cutting them free might cause fatal shock. "Medical team to the bridge," he called. "We need a xenobiology specialist down here." As they worked to free the survivors, more creatures began to appear in the corridors around them. But these didn't attack immediately. Instead, they seemed to observe, studying the humans with the same intelligent interest the first one had shown. "They're learning about us," realized Private Chen. "Just like they learned about the council." Crew. Martinez felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. These creatures weren't just predators. They were intelligent predators who adapted to their prey, and they had never encountered anything like humans before. "All teams, we have what we came for," he announced. "Prepare for tactical withdrawal. And keep your eyes open. I think we're about to see what these things do when they've finished studying us." As if summoned by his words, the chittering sounds began echoing through the ship's modified corridors. But now the sounds carried a different tone: excitement, anticipation. The hunt was about to begin. The human way of war, what happened next, wasn't a battle. It was an education. The creatures came at the human boarding teams with the confidence of apex predators who had never met anything they couldn't hunt. They moved through the ship's modified corridors with fluid grace, using their knowledge of the transformed interior to set up ambushes and coordinate attacks. They had done this before, many times, but they had never done it against humans. "Contact front," Sergeant Williams called out as a group of 6 creatures rounded the corner ahead of Alpha Team. The aliens moved in perfect coordination, some scaling the walls while others charged directly down the corridor. Captain Martinez didn't hesitate. Overlapping fields of fire. Take them down. The plasma rifles opened up in sequence, creating a wall of superheated energy that turned the corridor into a death trap. The creatures tried to use their agility to dodge, but the humans had fought in ship corridors before. They knew how to create kill zones. 4 of the creatures dropped immediately. The other 2 made it to melee range before Corporal Johnson's combat knife found vital organs with surgical precision. "Sector clear," Martinez reported, proceeding to extraction point. But as they moved, more creatures appeared. These ones were different, larger, with thicker armor plating and what appeared to be natural weapons fused to their limbs. They had adapted. They're evolving their tactics, observed Sergeant Williams as he switched to armor-piercing rounds. "So are we," Martinez replied grimly. He activated his suit's tactical display, which showed the positions of all team members and known hostile contacts. "Johnson, Williams, take the flanks. Chen, watch our 6. Standard room clearing formation." The humans moved through the ship like a machine designed for one purpose: killing efficiently. Every movement was calculated, every shot placed with deadly precision. When the creatures tried to use the ship's modified layout against them, the humans adapted faster. When the aliens attempted to drop from ceiling vents, they found plasma grenades waiting for them. When they tried to swarm through narrow passages, they encountered overlapping fields of automatic weapon fire. When they attempted to use their superior numbers, they discovered that humans had been fighting overwhelming odds since their species learned to make fire. "Beta team reporting," came Captain Rodriguez's voice over the comm. "Engineering section secured. We've eliminated approximately 40 hostiles and found evidence of a breeding chamber. Recommend immediate sterilization." Admiral Chen's voice was cold and professional. "Approved. Use thermite charges. Burn it all." From the Vengeance's bridge, Chen watched the tactical displays showing the progress of her boarding teams. The creatures were learning, adapting their tactics with impressive speed. But humans learned faster. "Admiral," reported Commander Park, "I'm detecting movement on the planet's surface. Large scale. These things might have called for reinforcements." Chen studied the sensor readings. Massive underground structures were opening, revealing tunnel systems that went deep into the planet's crust. And things were coming up from those tunnels. "Lots of things. How many? Conservative estimate?" "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands," Chen nodded grimly. "Signal the fleet. Prepare orbital bombardment coordinates. If we can't save this system, we'll make sure these things don't spread to others." Back on the Serenity's edge, the 3 rescued council members were beginning to regain consciousness as marine medics worked to reverse the effects of their captivity. Dr. Velnara, the Altarian captain, was the first to speak coherently. Where are we?" she asked weakly. "You're safe," Marine Medic Petty Officer Kim assured her. "Human rescue teams. We're getting you out of here." Dr. Velnara's large eyes widened as she processed this information. "Humans? The Council called the humans?" "Yes, ma'am. And we're very good at this kind of work." As if to emphasize the point, an explosion echoed through the ship as Beta Team detonated their thermite charges in the engineering section. The blast was followed by inhuman screams that quickly cut off. "What are you doing to my ship?" Dr. Velnara asked in horror. "Cleaning it," replied Petty Officer Kim matter-of-factly. "These things turned it into a nest. We're making sure nothing survives to infect other vessels." The Altarian captain tried to sit up, her scientific mind overriding her physical weakness. "You can't just destroy everything. We need to study them, understand how they—" Her words were cut off by another explosion, this one much larger. Through the ship's modified walls, they could hear the sound of human weapons systematically destroying everything the creatures had built. "Ma'am," Petty Officer Kim said gently but firmly, "with respect, your species tried to understand them. Look how that worked out." Dr. Velnara fell silent, but her expression showed the growing realization of what the humans were doing. They weren't just rescuing survivors. They were committing genocide. In the ship's corridors, Alpha Team had linked up with Charlie Team and was fighting their way to the extraction point. The creatures had realized their usual tactics weren't working and had begun throwing everything they had at the humans. "This is getting interesting," observed Sergeant Williams as he dropped a creature that had somehow grown additional arms since their last encounter. "Adaptive evolution in real time," Private Chen noted, putting 3 rounds into something that looked like it had been designed specifically to counter human body armor. "They're changing faster than we've ever seen." Captain Martinez checked his ammunition counter. They were going through a lot of rounds, but the extraction point was only 50 meters away. "Doesn't matter how fast they adapt. Dead is dead." The creatures seemed to understand this as well. They had stopped trying to capture or torture the humans. Now they were simply trying to kill them as efficiently as possible. Walls erupted with new types of creatures designed for different attack patterns. Ceiling panels dropped modified hunters with specialized claws for cutting through human armor. "They're throwing everything at us," reported Corporal Johnson. "It's like they're testing every possible counter to our tactics." "Let them test," Martinez replied, switching to his backup weapon as his primary rifle overheated. "We've got more experience being hunted than they have hunting." The final push to the extraction point was a running battle through corridors that seemed to actively fight against them. The ship's modified structure tried to slow them down with maze-like passages and dead ends that hadn't been there moments before. But humans had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill them. They had learned to fight in environments that changed against enemies that adapted. With limited resources and no guarantee of survival, the creatures had picked the wrong prey. "Extraction point secured," announced Charlie. Team leader Lieutenant Hayes. "Boarding shuttles inbound, as I..." The rescue teams prepared to leave the ship. They left behind something the creatures had never encountered before: total devastation. Every nest, every breeding chamber, every modified section of the ship was burning or destroyed. "All teams aboard," reported Captain Martinez as the last shuttle sealed its airlock. "Recommend immediate scuttling of the vessel. Nothing on that ship should survive." Admiral Chen's response was immediate. "Orbital bombardment commencing." All shuttles cleared a minimum safe distance. The Serenity's edge disappeared in a ball of plasma fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. But Chen wasn't done. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Prepare for planetary bombardment. Full sterilization protocol." Commander Park looked up from his station. "Admiral, the planet shows signs of an extensive ecosystem. There might be non-hostile species down there." Chen's expression was stone cold. "Any species that evolved alongside these things is either extinct or just as dangerous. We're not taking chances." The rescued council members, watching from the medical bay of the Vengeance, saw the human fleet arrange itself in bombardment formation around their planet. "You can't," whispered Dr. Velnara. "An entire world?" Petty Officer Kim looked at her with something approaching sympathy. "Ma'am, your people called us because you needed these things dead. We don't do half measures." On the planet below, millions of creatures that had never known fear began to experience it for the first time, as human weapon systems locked onto their positions. The hunt was over. Now came the extermination. No survivors, no mercy. Admiral Chen stood before the tactical display in the Vengeance's war room, studying the planet below with the cold calculation of a woman who had made hard decisions before. The surface showed massive movement as millions of creatures emerged from underground tunnel systems, apparently responding to the destruction of their orbital nest. "Fleet status. Report," she ordered. "All ships in bombardment." "Formation," reported Commander Park. "Cyclonic torpedoes loaded and targeted. Atmospheric processors standing by." The 3 rescued council members had been brought to the bridge under medical supervision. Dr. Velnara, despite her weakened condition, had insisted on speaking with the human admiral. What she saw on the tactical displays made her hands shake. "Admiral Chen," she said, her voice barely steady. "Surely you're not planning to destroy the entire planet." Chen turned to face the Altarian scientist, her expression neutral but her eyes hard as steel. "Dr. Velnara, how long were you and your crew held captive?" "Approximately 18 hours before you arrived. But I don't see how, in 18 hours, these creatures analyzed your technology, adapted to your defensive measures, and turned your ship into a breeding facility. They kept you alive not as prisoners but as livestock." Chen's voice remained calm and professional. Now imagine what they could do with 18 years, or 18 generations. Dr. Zenworth, the Zarian xenobiologist, flickered his crystalline form weakly. But surely containment protocols could what? Chen interrupted. Keep them locked up until they evolve past whatever barriers you put in place. These things adapt in real time. They learn. They improve. And they enjoy causing suffering. Engineer Coralan, the third survivor, spoke up with bitter understanding. The Admiral is right. I watched them modify their tactics every time we changed our defenses. They turned our own ship into a weapon against us. Chen nodded toward the engineer, someone who understands. These creatures aren't just dangerous. They're an existential threat to every sentient species in the galaxy. They don't want territory or resources. They want to hunt. And they're good at it. On the planet's surface, the sensor readings showed creatures emerging from deep underground in numbers that defied imagination. Tunnel systems that went down for kilometers were disgorging things that had never seen sunlight, all of them apparently responding to some kind of coordinated signal. Admiral, reported the sensor officer, I'm reading structural modifications to the planet's geology. These tunnels aren't natural. They've been engineering their entire world as a hunting ground. Chen studied the readouts. The tunnel systems formed a complex network that connected every continent. The creatures had turned their planet into a single massive trap, designed to capture and contain prey on a global scale. How long would this have taken to build? Conservative estimate? Thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands. The implications were staggering. These creatures had been planning and building for longer than most galactic civilizations had existed. They had engineered their entire world for the purpose of hunting other species. Ma'am, came Captain Rodriguez's voice from the Retribution. We're detecting launches from the planet's surface. The creatures are attempting to reach orbit. On the main screen, dozens of organic projectiles were rising from the planet. Primitive but effective spacecraft grown, rather than built. The creatures were trying to escape before the bombardment began. Intercept and destroy, Chen ordered without hesitation. Nothing leaves that planet alive. The human fighters launched from their carriers, sleek predators designed for ship-to-ship combat. The organic vessels were fast and maneuverable, but they were designed for surprise attacks, not open warfare against prepared enemies. The space battle was brief and decisive. Human weapons and tactics, refined through generations of conflict, overwhelmed the creatures' attempts to escape. Within minutes, the orbital space around the planet was clear of all moving targets. Dr. Velnara watched the destruction with growing horror. Admiral, please reconsider. These creatures could teach us so much about evolution, adaptation, survival. They could teach us how to become like them, Chen replied coldly. No, thank you. She activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We have confirmed that the planet below represents a clear and present danger to galactic civilization. These creatures have spent millennia preparing to hunt other species on an interstellar scale. They cannot be contained, reasoned with, or reformed, Chen paused, knowing that her next words would be recorded and reviewed by the Galactic Council for years to come. By the authority granted to me by the Terra Defense Force and the Galactic Council's request for assistance, I am authorizing complete planetary sterilization, target all major population centers and tunnel systems, leave nothing that could survive and spread to other worlds. The council members on the bridge stared at her in shock. Dr. Velnara found her voice first. You can't. The Galactic Council never authorized genocide. Chen turned to face her, and for the first time her professional mask slipped to reveal the anger beneath. Your council called us because you needed predators killed. You specifically requested that we send something these creatures had never faced before. Well, congratulations. You got what you asked for. She gestured to the tactical display showing the planet below. These things kept your people alive so they could torture them slowly. They turned your ship into a nest and planned to use it to spread to other worlds. They've spent thousands of years preparing to hunt the entire galaxy. Chen's voice rose slightly, the only sign of the fury she kept under tight control. You called us because your civilized methods failed. Because your peaceful approach got your people killed. Because when faced with something that hunted for sport, you needed someone who could hunt it back. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems and the quiet reports from the weapons officers as they finalized targeting solutions. Admiral, came the voice of Captain Martinez, now aboard the fleet's command ship. All boarding teams report complete sterilization of hostile vessels. No survivors, no recoverable technology. Understood. Begin planetary bombardment. The cyclonic torpedoes launched first. Massive weapons designed to crack a planet's crust and expose the inner layers to space. They struck the major tunnel openings with precisely calculated force, collapsing the underground networks that had taken millennia to build. The creatures on the surface tried to fight back, launching more organic vessels and even attempting to use their modified geology as weapons. But they had never faced an enemy that simply didn't care about the planet's survival. Atmospheric processors firing, reported the weapons officer. The second wave of weapons ignited the planet's atmosphere, burning away every trace of organic matter in a controlled firestorm that would leave the world sterile but intact. The flames spread across continents, following the tunnel systems deep underground. Dr. Velnara collapsed into a chair, staring at the screens showing an entire world dying. How can you be so calm about this? Chen looked at her with something approaching pity. Doctor, my species crawled out of a world where everything tried to kill us. We learned that sometimes the only way to protect what you care about is to completely destroy what threatens it. She gestured to the burning planet. Those creatures would have spread across the galaxy eventually. They would have turned every world they touched into a hunting ground. They would have made what happened to your ship happen to entire civilizations. Engineer Coralin nodded slowly. She's right. If they had reached other system, they didn't, Chen said firmly. They never will. Because we stopped them here. The bombardment continued for 6 hours, ensuring that every tunnel system, every nest, every trace of the creature's civilization was completely destroyed. When it was finished, the planet below was a burned, sterile rock with no atmosphere and no possibility of supporting life. All weapons silent, reported Commander Park. No life signs detected anywhere in the system. Chen nodded with satisfaction. Signal the Council. Mission accomplished. The threat has been eliminated. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Dr. Velnara made one final plea. Admiral, when we report this to the Council, what should we tell them? Chen considered the question carefully. Tell them that when you call humans for help, you get human solutions. We don't negotiate with threats. We don't study dangers. We eliminate them. She paused at the bridge entrance. And tell them that the next time they have a problem they can't handle, they should think very carefully about whether they really want us to handle it for them. The human fleet jumped back into hyperspace, leaving behind a dead system and a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Humanity's mercy extended only to those who deserved it. The Council would debate the morality of the human response for years. They would write reports about excessive force and the importance of preserving xenobiological specimens for study, but they would never again question human methods, and when the next impossible threat emerged from the dark spaces between stars, they would call Earth first, because sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to send something more dangerous. The universe had learned what happened when you hunted something that hunted back, and it would not forget.